What's up guys, it's Will back again, and today's review is Inferno. Inferno is a mystery thriller film that was directed by Ron Howard and is the sequel to the 2006 film The Da Vinci Code and the 2009 film Angels and Demons. Inferno is the third installment in the Robert Langdon film series and is based on the novel of the same name written by author Dan Brown. Okay, so Inferno kicks off when a man named Bertrand Zobrist, played by Ben Foster, decides to kill himself after being tracked down by the World Health Organization, or WHO. He was being tracked by the WHO because he manufactured a plague called Inferno that was designed to wipe out the majority of the human species in order to reduce our overall population numbers. Well, not soon after this occurs, Tom Hanks' character Robert Langdon finds himself in Florence, Italy with no memory of why he's there, or no memory of the last several days for that matter. He finds himself in the care of Felicity Jones' character Dr. Sienna Brooks, who eventually helps him escape some organizations trying to kill him for what he knows, and eventually the two find a map in Dr. Langdon's jacket that sends them on a wild quest to find the Inferno plague and destroy it. And the rest of the film is spent watching Professor Langdon and Dr. Sienna Brooks team up and travel across Europe together as they race against the clock in an attempt to stop a mass extinction event in the Inferno plague. Okay guys, look, I'm gonna shoot straight with you on this one. Do not, I repeat, do not go spend your hard-earned money on a ticket to this movie. It's mostly a complete disaster. It starts off really rough, then gets better for a little bit, then proceeds to nosedive straight into the ground for the final act. I think this is the worst one of the three films so far, and that's really saying something because it's been a while since I've seen the previous two films, but I remember them not being that great either. Now you can't always trust tomato meters because sometimes I'll find myself disagreeing with a score for a certain movie, but just keep in mind that the first film in this franchise, The Da Vinci Code, has a 25%. Film 2, Angels and Demons, has a 37%, and now Inferno, as I'm recording this, has a 20%. And I remember watching the trailer for Inferno like 10 times because it was shown in the majority of films that I saw in theaters, which is a ton considering I do so many reviews. And I remember how awful that trailer was. It was easily by a landslide the worst trailer that I've seen in 2016 thus far, and it did the movie zero favors. It just looked awful. But I at least gotta give credit in regards to honesty and accuracy, because what the trailer made the movie look like is exactly what you get with the full film. There are several places we could start, but considering we just discussed the trailer and its overall construction, I want to discuss how poorly this film is edited. Everything operates at such a breakneck pace, and there's so many cuts that it's almost impossible to tell what's going on at times. Characters are here, then randomly they're over there now, and then characters will be speaking and the audio seemed out of sync or something, and then when action happens, you have no idea what's going on because everything is shot and edited in such a frantic way. I think the editing might have been this film's biggest weakness because it just sucked you out of the story so consistently with how jarring and frantic it all was. But let's transition to the story itself. I really don't think it makes very much sense at all, and the movie never feels coherent. For the first two-ish acts or so, the characters will meet and team up with one another in very unnatural and contrived ways. They'll have these grand revelations that progress the plot and ultimately help them solve the mystery in illogical ways, and then the way the story is actually paced is just all over the place. The way that Dr. Sienna and Professor Langdon actually come into contact and soon thereafter team up is really towing the believability line. Eventually there's an attempt to explain that them meeting wasn't purely circumstantial, but that explanation is very clumsily executed. I mean, this whole story is hard to actually immerse yourself into anyway, but it's especially tough to believe because how many conveniences are present due to some leaps in logic. So the whole plot lays its foundation on the fact that Professor Langdon can't remember the previous 3 days or so, but right when the duo hits a snag in their quest, Professor Langdon has these ridiculous visions that give him a glimpse into what actually happened during those very crucial stretches of time. It never fails. Right as the duo hits a snag or they're about to hit a snag, boom, grand revelation, problem solved. Well, like I said, this movie operates at a pretty breakneck pace, and there's never any time to sit back and simply reflect on what's happening because everyone's in a race against the clock. The problem with this is that there is basically zero time to understand our characters in any significant way. There are a few situations where characters will try to explain their backstory to one another, usually in a malicious way, but it always felt like, why now? Why give your opponent all your knowledge and insight in an attempt to showboat? It doesn't really seem like a good strategy that makes sense. Okay, so let's discuss something I actually did like about Inferno, and that's the acting. I think you get very solid performances all around from a pretty strong cast. Tom Hanks is always good in every role he takes on, and he's always acted the role of Professor Langdon better than the character himself is written, so he's good. Felicity Jones was also a really nice addition to the franchise because although her character is fairly stale overall, she does give a nice, well-rounded performance. Omar Sy is good as Christophe Bouchard, head of the SRS team trying to hunt down Professor Langdon. Sidse Knudsen is good as Elizabeth Sinsky, head of the WHO, and Irrfan Khan is good as Harry Sims, head of a secret agency called the Consortium. Hopefully I didn't butcher those names too badly. Oh, and I almost forgot, Ben Foster is in this movie for maybe like 2 minutes is scientist Bertrand Zobris. They really just show him speaking in the same video over and over though. So all in all, this movie is one of those where you get good acting performances, but they still can't overcome the poorly written and developed characters. I also enjoyed a stretch of like the middle of Act 2 to early Act 3 or so. I was thinking to myself like, oh, this film is finally hitting its stride and it's going to be smooth sailing from here on out. And then it gets bad again. But still, this movie has about a 2-hour runtime, and I'd say like an hour 15 to an hour 40 is probably the best stretch of the film. The story is more believable, the character interactions are better written, and the direction seems a bit more clear. The last thing I want to mention though is the believability of the story itself. Yes, this is an outrageous story about a manufactured plague, but that's not my problem with it. I can get on board with that. It was mostly the conveniently incompetent government and secret officials that bugged me. Like Professor Langdon and Sierra would be on the run, and they actually are found fairly easily and fairly quickly. And then when they find them, it's like they're trying to catch them with both arms tied behind their back. They're just like, shucks, they snuck through the back exit again. Like, you're a highly trained organization that should be able to establish a perimeter and stop people from sneaking out through back gates and running through gardens and shit. But overall, I was really disappointed with Inferno, and it has to be one of the worst movies of 2016 thus far. I did think it had some nice acting and a decent stretch between acts 2 and 3, but I also felt the editing was pretty poor, the pacing was all over the place, the story felt really silly and contrived, and the characters and dialogue were very weak. I'm gonna give Inferno a 4 out of 10 and recommend that you definitely pass on this one in theaters unless you feel like you absolutely have to see it because you read the book. So did you guys see Inferno yet? What did you think of it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if not, let me know whether you'd be interested in watching this film or not. And as always, if you like this video, click that like button and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for much more content like this. That's all for now though. This is WillFoxification signing off. See you in the next review.